everybody, and
Hello.
welcome to the Macabre Podcast universe. And what is this show about, Jordan?
This show, I think it exists to prove people wrong when they say sequels are never better than the originals.
That is why we exist.
Cool. Great.
And we are starting a brand new series today.
Yes. Kind of. Yes, we are, but also it's also part of a MPU series.
Yeah, because last year we covered kind of the conglomerate that is Batman. Mm-hmm. And we thought, what if there was something we could do that was a little more personal in regards to an actor?
Yep.
So as you know, listener, but Matt may not know because none of these episodes have come out yet, we have already recorded Bill and Ted and The Matrix. And now, 2 weeks ago, the three of us at some point saw The Matrix Resurrections. I'm assuming that it ruled and we all loved it. And then here we are. It's January, and we're talking John Wick, the third trilogy that is Keanu Reeves, which is our greater series. And we're here with Matt Stormageddon. Hello,
Hi.
Matt.
Hi. I'm very excited to be here. It was a pleasure having both of you on Screen Snark. I'm super stoked that Rachel connected all of us.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy to be here. I love the show. I love this idea of following an actor through his career. I'm a fan of the Keanu pod. May it rest in peace, since it hasn't been around much lately. Hopefully it'll come back. But I'm a big Keanu Reeves fan, and I've been a champion of his even through the quiet years. And so
Nice.
it's fun to see this renaissance. And when we get into the movie a bit, I can share my backstory with John Wick. But I didn't actually see the John Wick movies when they came out in theaters. I missed them initially.
Me too.
And I came back around to them, funnily enough, because Rachel's mom was on Screen Snark and recommended them so highly.
Oh, nice.
What? That's cool.
And so my spouse and I guess I'll tell it now, my spouse and I love schlocky action movies. We love Atomic Blonde. We love, we watch all of those, not schlocky, but like just over the top ridiculous action movies. And so when I heard the pitch for these, I was like, oh, this sounds like exactly our ish. We have to watch these. And of course I was very much right. And I rewatched it today and was just again blown away. Like it was my first time watching it. I'm excited to chat about this film. This is a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, this movie, it's just kind of wild, and I think it marks, we've seen it a little, because this came out in 2014, and at this point, so we have, for our listeners, we did Matrix, what am I trying to say? We went Matrix 2003, and then of course last week we talked about the one that just came out, but there's this whole gap where the Taken and Bourne version of filming action sequences takes over. And in Bourne,
Mission Impossible.
Well, yeah, but Mission Impossible is more in this vein.
Oh,
long
of the times
shots,
they came out. Oh,
great
got it.
choreography,
Yeah,
great
yeah.
stunts.
Right.
That one kind of keeps things going along. We will cover it one day, folks, but we're gearing up because that's a lot of Tom.
Yeah.
And we love Tom.
We're
and those
saving
episodes are
Tom.
going to be too long.
Yeah.
But it feels like John Wick 2014 is a nexus point that we will be able to look back to in 20 years and go, oh, that's when people started changing the way they filmed action and started going back to longer shots.
Yeah.
That's my prediction / what I think we've seen in the past 7 years.
Did you see this in theaters, Micah?
I did not. Yes, so this movie came out and I really didn't have any affinity toward Keanu Reeves. I have to be honest here. I didn't dislike him or anything. It just wasn't,
Right.
He didn't take up a lot of space for me. And so I didn't see the movie. Saw, on IMDb, I was seeing that, it was getting good reviews and it was highly rated, but I was like, whatever. It's probably just, like a Liam Neeson directed video kind of movie. That's what I assumed. And then John Wick Chapter 2 comes out, and I was in Ecuador with Anatomy of Frank, and they're recording their album, and I'm jumping in on a couple of things, and a lot of downtime. And that's when John Wick Chapter 2 came out, and I saw that it was getting crazy high reviews. And so I thought, you know what? It's on Netflix. Let me watch it on my iPhone 5.
So many of the first time that you've seen movies are on tiny screens.
There's this weird period of my life of like 3 years where I had
I think
an
it's
iPhone.
longer than 3 years, man. Because
Well, it's
you
like-
had that small TV in your bedroom growing up, and then you had a portable DVD player.
Well, no, that was not my portable DVD
Yeah, but
player,
you
but I
still
did borrow
watched.
it.
You still watched spectacles on that.
I know. But honestly, it was a different time. Come on.
Well, no, yeah.
But anyway, so I have it on my little iPhone, and I, like go to sleep or something, get it downloaded, and then the next day I watch it, and I was like, that was pretty dang cool. And then, I'll get into it next week, but then I had a whole experience with Chapter 2, and then it was a pretty instantly like, okay, I am a John Wick man. We hold up John Wick in this household, But that was my first experience with it.
Okay.
But since then, we got the Blu-ray, we got the 4K, even though we don't even.
No, you're no longer watching it on your phone.
Yeah, we're good. I've made up for it. I've atoned.
Good.
What about you though? First time.
So my experience with John Wick is I remember seeing trailers and thinking, oh, whatever. It's Keanu. He sucks. Because growing up, my dad does not like Keanu. It's like he's a terrible actor. He's stiff, whatever. I did not grow up watching Bill and Ted. I did not grow up watching Point Break. So not until my adult life, I'm finally watching Keanu things, and it's like he is amazing. And then I think a little bit too when the trailers came out for John Wick, it's just like, I don't know. I don't really care about action. I don't dislike it, but it's just like whatever. And then
This is, for the listeners of the show, this is definitely in Jordan and I's film snob phase.
definitely
2014, that is ripe for like,
We
no,
were
I
really
only watch
annoying.
Paul Thomas
we're
Anderson
only
movies.
a little bit less annoying now.
Yeah.
Probably. But
Still love Paul Thomas Anderson.
I think obviously, obviously you, Micah, told me about this movie because you watched it and you were probably texting me about it while you were in Ecuador. And
Yeah.
I don't remember if I watched it by myself or with you, but I watched it pretty soon after your recommendation. And it's like, oh no, this is awesome. This is like so good.
No, I actually kind of remember it differently.
I didn't like it?
No, I'm starting to remember that. I think we put these movies on our registry, right?
Oh, did we get it for our wedding?
No, we didn't.
Oh,
We
okay.
didn't. We had
got Spider-Man for our wedding.
We got the Spider-Man trilogy, yeah. But yeah, no. So your brother gave us John Wick,
Yeah.
and I don't think you'd seen it yet.
No.
And then, so this is after we were married, and then we had extra leftover money from like a gift card from our wedding, and we bought Chapter 2.
Yeah, not things we might have needed, just movies.
Yeah, and I think at the time you were kind of like, okay, because you hadn't seen them. And then I was the next like Saturday, we did a double feature.
We did.
And
That's
by
right.
the end of it, you were like hooping and hollering.
Yeah, I probably was doing a lot of fist pumps. And then I feel like this also was, I can't remember exactly when I watched Mission Impossible, but it was with you and I know that. But
Yeah.
Mission Impossible is also like, I never watched those growing up because my dad doesn't like Tom Cruise. My dad's very influential in my life, obviously. And then you...
Both just objectively wrong opinions.
I know. And you were raving
Yes.
about those. And I finally watched those. I'm like, oh, action can be fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
And John Wick
Yeah.
was a big reason for that. Like, oh, it can be fun.
Yeah.
So since then, it's like I might choose an action movie over maybe a dramatic movie these days.
Yeah.
The
That was
funniest
very
thing.
long-winded.
The funniest thing about the trilogy for us is like I think we recorded that episode with Rachel's mom right after the third one had like hit theaters, right? And she had just seen it.
Oh, so, okay.
And so,
wow.
and so we watched 1 and 2 back to back on like Amazon or whatever streaming service we were able to buy them on. And like, then we were like, all right, great, we'll go see it in the theaters. And it was like, we took just long enough that the third one was out of theaters already. And so we had to wait like another handful of months till it came to, and it's like pretty much as soon as it came to streaming, it was like date night. We were like, me and my spouse watched it. Like we couldn't wait. But yeah, I mean, I was absolutely blown away by it the first time I watched it. And I've only watched it a few times since, but like every time it's a roller coaster.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to be your entry guest into this
Yes.
franchise.
Yeah, so you said earlier that you were a fan of Keanu through the silent era, as you
Yeah.
dubbed it. Or I think
Yeah.
you used a different term. But so since we have brought Keanu up to 2003, Would you mind filling in the gaps as someone who was following him and still enjoying him?
Sure. I mean, I don't know that I was actually like necessarily seeking out his movies, but like,
Okay.
I of course saw this. I saw Speed, and I saw, like his big blockbusters. I don't think I saw Bram Stoker's Dracula in theaters. I think I was still too much of a wuss then. One might argue I still am now. I don't really like scary movies mostly. Yeah. But like, I loved the Bill and Ted movies. I loved Point Break. I loved Johnny Mnemonic. I have such a soft spot for that terrible movie. In fact, if you not to plug my stuff too early, but if you listen to Screen Snark, my TV and movie podcast that these folks have lovingly graced their presence with us, on our very special Cyberpunk episode that we did with Patrick H. Willems, where we talked about Johnny Mnemonic, I mentioned that the hotel, like, I want hookers and cocaine, like that yelling speech is shades of early John Wick. Like, if you watch when he's angry in that scene and you watch when he's angry in this movie, you see that character, especially in the second and third movies when he gets really angry. And so, like, but I've always really, and of course I loved The Matrix. Although it's funny, The Matrix I didn't see in theaters. Yeah. I saw The Matrix on DVD after it came out of theaters because a friend of mine was like a sci-fi nerd. And I've always been a sci-fi nerd, but for whatever reason, that movie just kind of passed me by. He was like, you have to watch it. Like, you absolutely do. And of course I fell in love with it and then saw the others. Yeah. Like, I saw all of Keanu's hits, and then like more recent years, like things got quiet for a while. He was doing John Wick, but beyond that, he hadn't been doing a ton of other things, and then started branching out again. And like Always Be My Maybe, when he made like this comedy renaissance return, and now of course has since done Face the Music and all of this other, been in the SpongeBob movie, like been in all this stuff. And like, I always knew Keanu, while he could be wooden, was an incredibly diverse actor.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like this is the first movie of the modern era where we really get to see it. I mean, we haven't broken down the plot yet, but like the first 20 minutes is almost meditative in how the kind of actor he is.
Yeah, I know.
So like, when we get to that, like, I have so many comments just because I watched this today, so it would be fresh. And like, I have a lot of thoughts about his acting specifically in this, let alone all the other incredible actors and actresses in this.
Well, yeah, it's so nuts because I grew up knowing him as like, he's kind of like a goof, was kind of his reputation. Like, when you watch him in something, it's like, oh boy, he's in this. Yeah. But going back, and I mean, he's unbelievable in Matrix. And then I think John Wick really, I mean, for everybody, this moment, especially after Chapter 2, and then the year Chapter 3 comes out, it's like this moment where everyone says, no, we love John Wick. He's officially like the golden standard. He's and anytime he's in anything, it's like an event, and we love him, and that's that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I've gone back and watched stuff like The Day the Earth Stood Still, which he did, which was incredible. And like, I think the problem was in the after The Matrix, in that time between The Matrix and John Wick, which I can't even think of how many years that was, maybe like 5 to 10 years. Like, he did other things, but he wasn't this like powerhouse quite yet. Like, he had been, and then he kind of took a couple of steps back and was still around. And then, but it's inarguable now since John Wick that he is a megastar and is loved by everyone and can almost make no mistakes. He's still not perfect, but can like he is he's the movie version of Weird Al Yankovic in the fact that he is like this untarnished, purely wholesome character, right? Like, Keanu Reeves is up there with like Weird Al, as if I ever heard anything bad, like they had done something heinous, I'd be like, oh my God, not them. Like, of anyone, not them. Like, just about any other white man, I'd be like, yeah, okay, figures. It's a white guy, totally capable. But like those two are like the pinnacle of like wholesomeness that I just would be shocked if they did anything bad.
Right. I couldn't agree more with that.
Comparison to Weird Al, that's so unbelievable. And I mean, much like Weird Al, like Weird Al has had these moments where you have like the Eat It days, and he's huge, and then kind of tones down for a while, and then you have White and Nerdy, and then I think his involvement with the Comedy Bang Bang TV show kind of brought him back, and now he's just kind of like one of the guys. We go, yes, Weird Al. If you don't like him, I think you're the problem. You know, that's kind of the situation.
I don't trust anybody who doesn't like Weird Al. I don't trust him.
But yeah, the thing about Keanu that you know, there's some actors, and we say this a lot on this podcast, but you know, you have your Daniel Day-Lewis's where they can kind of disappear into anything. And then you have actors like Keanu where if they're not used properly, it really doesn't work.
Right.
And that's most actors, even some of the best ones. You know,
Absolutely.
you can find a movie of any actor where they are just like not in the right movie.
Yeah.
And it sucks. But I think now people just like totally get Keanu. I think he gets Keanu. And here we are enjoying the fruits of their labor.
Hell yeah.
So could you fill us in on the years between Matrix before we jump into who made the movie?
Yeah, so some of the other movies he was in between are Constantine, Lake House, A Scanner Darkly,
Also
The Day the
great.
Earth Stood Still, and 47 Ronin. There are other movies in between that. Those are
Yeah.
just like
Those are
big
like the
ones.
notable ones.
Yeah.
Constantine's another one. I saw that in theaters. I loved the comic books. I didn't know the character super duper well. And so like I was really bummed when I found out he was queer and they didn't really do the queer relationship in the like canonically Constantine's been in relationships with King Shark. Like not only queer,
okay.
but literally a monster effer as well. Like which is we stand that where I'm from. But like that. Oh man, that's such a weird little movie, and yet I loved it. I remember seeing it in theaters, and then finding out later, you know, oh, this is that comic book character, and like getting really digging in. He's been championing that movie recently. He did a DC panel at DC Fandom a couple of years ago, like with the director talking about how they wish they could bring it back or like do another thing. Yeah, he loved playing that character.
They should do like a Constantine too. We actually recently watched Constantine for the first time.
Yeah.
And I would say I didn't like the movie, but I do get what it is, and I did kind of appreciate it, if that makes sense. It just didn't scratch the itch for me.
It pretty much scratched all my itches. I really liked it.
Keanu Reeves, Rachel Weisz, like what's to not love, really?
Ghosts and demons and things. Just
and
great.
Tilda's pretty fun in that movie as David the Archangel.
Yeah.
Oh man, so good.
Yeah, we got to find some sort of series where we can talk about her in depth. I don't know what that would be.
I'm sure she'll pop up somewhere.
Or we probably have actually because she's in the MCU. We've talked about her.
Yeah.
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 Absolutely.
Yeah.
Doctor Strange, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, but let's talk about John Wick here. The movie is directed by Chad Stahelski, who, as we will remember, was the stunt double for Keanu in The Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And he did some of the choreography. Of course, I always get his name mixed up. Yoon Wing Poo did the choreography of The Matrix, but I believe he did have a hand in it as well. But what's interesting is this movie has an uncredited director, David Leitch.
Oh.
I think that's how you pronounce his name anyway. And the reason is with the DGA, they have all these rules about how, like, if it's partners directing, what is it? They have to like prove how valuable the other person was.
Oh.
And it's a very weird thing. From what I've heard and can tell, it's just kind of murky and a little bit like if you turned in your paperwork on Friday, it might not be the same result as Monday. Kind of weird. You have to have it like it's branded this and this, the Wachowskis, the Coen brothers.
Wait, so
it's like they're connected.
On the other movies?
Well, he was not a part of the other movies.
Oh, okay.
But on this movie, he's uncredited. But he would go on to make Atomic Blonde, Deadpool 2, and Hobbs and Shaw.
Yeah.
So, and Chad Stahelski has gone on to make John Wick 2, John Wick 3, and John Wick 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if this is true, but I saw a tab for John Wick 5 on IMDb.
So it's only a rumor, but yeah, supposedly that it's going beyond 4, but there's been no official announcement that I've seen.
Thank you.
I'm
glad you're on this episode.
I mean, which is interesting. I mean, also, I take the information I have with a grain of salt. Like maybe it had, but like there's definitely like chapter 4's in the works. It's coming out, I believe, next year. And so, but I don't know if there's anything official on 5 yet. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I'll watch John Wick till 3700 at this point. Like, there's no way I get bored of this character or this franchise. I don't think.
Well, the good thing it has is even if the story breaks down, as long as they just bring us the action.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
we have some we're going to save them, but maybe once we're done recording, we can talk a little bit. But we have some pretty hot opinions on Chapter 3, actually.
Okay.
Which
I'd
think
be
is a
curious
bit
to hear
rare.
them.
But we haven't rewatched it since it's been in theaters. So by
That's
the
true.
time we get to that episode, we might be like, actually,
This.
A+, let's go.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Because that's happened on this podcast more times than I'm comfortable admitting. So this movie is written by Derek Kolstad, who will go on to write Nobody, which is a very similar type of movie. A lot of people think that they're in the same universe. There's no official, because folks, if it was official, we'd be covering it. But we'll do a Patreon episode on it this month.
Yeah.
So go to patreon.com/Micah McCaw, link in the episode notes, and listen to us talk about Nobody. The cinematography is by Jonathan Sala, who does the David Leitch movies and a ton of music videos. Music by Tyler Bates and Joel Richard. Comes out October 24th, 2014. $20 million budget. Makes $43 million domestic and $86 worldwide. That's a good hit.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I got for the start of this, and then we can get into some more other notes, but change of voice.
Okay. I forgot to look up how to pronounce this guy's last name. But
Michael Nyqvist, right?
Nyqvist,
I don't know.
I think, or something.
Nyqvist.
Yeah,
So how
maybe.
it's spelled, kind of.
Sort
It's
of.
throwing me
I
off.
mean, yeah.
He is what's the character's name? I even
Vigo.
blinked on that. Vigo. Thank you. He is also in Ghost Protocol, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the Swedish version.
Yeah, he's the Daniel Craig character
Oh.
in the Swedish movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then he's also in Clonia, A Hidden Life, and Hunter Killer. And then
Wait, he's in A Hidden Life?
that's what I got.
Because I thought this was his last movie.
Well,
Because he died.
let's see.
The Hidden Life came out like
I mean,
a couple of
yeah,
years ago.
Yeah. I don't know what to tell you. He was in it.
It must have shot something a long time ago. That's
I'm not
interesting.
sure. I've never seen it. I can't tell you.
Anyway,
And then Alfie Allen plays Yosef, his son. He's in Game of Thrones, The Predator, The Other Boleyn Girl, Night Teeth, Jojo Rabbit, How to Build a Girl, several other movies.
he is a quintessential. In this movie, he does such a great job of you cannot wait for him to die.
Oh yeah, like
Yeah.
the brat that you can't wait to get shot in the face. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just crazy, and I think so cool that like his death is so quick and like kind of meaningless.
Yeah, non-spectacular at all. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then Dean Winters plays Avi, who is like Vigo's right-hand dude. He's in 30 Rock, P.S. I Love You, Law and Order,
Mayhem.
Palmer, and he's Mayhem in the Allstate commercials.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Allstate.
Every insurance, ever since Geico, all the insurance companies are like, we have to be hilarious. And so it's hard to get them all straight. And
It's
only
true.
one of them is funny, and that's Geico. But I don't know. It kind of drives me bonkers.
This guy, like, I know him so much from the commercial that I kind of can't see him in anything anymore.
Yeah.
Like, it's just ripping me out.
The
a little
only
bit.
other thing I think of him from is 30 Rock because he was so prominent on 30 Rock. But beyond that, yeah,
Okay.
I'm the same.
Yeah, it's tough, and
it's
he does
fun-
a good job. He's fine.
Fun
Yeah,
side note, I believe this was the year Breaking Bad ended.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Vince Gilligan, at this point, he's invincible. Come on. Well, he makes, with the creator of House, a show called Battle Creek that ran on CBS, and it starred that guy and another guy, but it was like a murder of the week kind of show.
Oh, okay.
Not good.
Really?
Really not good.
Did Vince write it as well?
I think he was just producer and creator, but it did not last a full season.
Wow, that sucks for him.
And it was just very much like, it almost feels like he had an old notebook or something, and then he's like, yeah, if you want this, you can have it.
Oh.
It was not
funny.
good.
And then Adrienne Palicki plays Miss Perkins. She is also in G.I. Joe Retaliation, Legion, Friday Night Lights, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And then John Leguizamo plays...
Leguizamo?
Leguizamo.
Yes.
I've presented stuff at work today. I'm like all talked out. He plays Aurelio, the guy at the shop. He's in so many things. I was like looking through his filmography. He's got so much. And obviously I'm just giving snapshots. He's in Spawn, Moulin Rouge, Romeo plus Juliet, Mandalorian, Infiltrator, Die Hard 2, Carlito's Way, and a million other things.
Yeah.
And then I'll finish it off with Lance Reddick, who's the hotel manager. He's in a ton of things as well, but just some like highlights. He's in White House Down, Bosch, and Castlevania.
He's great.
Yeah.
I love Lance Reddick. He's also the voice of Zavala in Destiny and Destiny 2, which are a video game series.
Oh,
where he plays a very important character in that. So it's always fun to... during the pandemic, he often shared videos of himself like recording voice lines for the game in his closet with like, blankets up in the wall because, he couldn't, during COVID, he couldn't. And he just seems like a chill dude. Like he's up there like as one of those actors that I love to meet. And John Leguizamo, I've loved since I was a kid. I think he was a perfectly fine Luigi in an otherwise not great Super Mario Brothers movie.
When I saw that credit, I'm like, I think I saw that movie, but I don't remember anything of it.
Not very good.
Yeah.
But he's also an incredible stand-up comedian. Like he has a stand-up comedy special called Freaked, I believe. And then he did one even recently about like, his Hispanic heritage and like growing up in New York. And he's very funny. If you've not watched any of his specials on Netflix, I highly recommend it. Like I've been a fan of his comedy work. He was in the past famously was like his first big movie break. And like it's funny. Like you're talking about the cast now. Like we didn't even mention some of the heavy hitters like Ian McShane and Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, I was gonna say you missed Ian McShane.
We've talked about him.
Ian McShane we have?
In Pirates of the Caribbean.
We did.
You
That's
did.
right.
And we have covered him.
That's why. Okay. Fair enough.
But like because I remember the overarching trilogy more strongly than this movie specifically, I completely forgot about Willem Dafoe. I completely forgot about John Leguizamo. I completely forgot about Adrienne Palicki, who I adore. She was great as Mockingbird in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and she's been in a bunch of other stuff. Like this cast is ridiculous. It's just such a killer cast. Even at the time, like, you could argue some of these folks were kind of more working character actors, but most of them are like Ian McShane, Willem Dafoe, and John Leguizamo could have starred in their own movies, and they are supporting cast here. It's always fun.
Yeah, it's like a murderer's row of support of character actors.
For sure.
And I think that adds like an element to this movie that also elevates it. This kind of fantasy element,
And you guys will talk about it in the other chapters, but chapter 2 and chapter 3, they just amp that up. Like they just bring in more character actors, more actors that Keanu's worked with on other stuff. Some of my favorite, and they keep the tradition of comedic actors playing serious roles. Like Jason Mantzoukas is in one of either 2 or 3.
Right.
I love Jason Mantzoukas.
The TikTok man.
The TikTok man. TikTok, Mr. Wick.
Or as Scott Aukerman calls him, the Dink Dink man on
Yes.
Comedy
The
Bang
Dink
Bang.
Dink Man. So I love the pedigree of these films from just the first one. Like clearly they must have been having fun with this casting. It doesn't happen by accident for sure.
Right.
Yeah, it's so it just has this vibe that again, because I think it can be hard to remember that when this comes out, Keanu's been in stuff that people have liked, disliked, but no big hits.
Right.
And so this looks like it's going to be just another one of those movies.
Right.
And it's just crazy how sure of itself this movie is. I mean, they break the cardinal screenwriting rule, which is killing a dog.
Yep.
A puppy, no less.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is like, that is something, if you want your audience to hate you, kill an animal. That is like...
Well, and especially a puppy, like, and like that was something that was told to me before I went into it. And I tell other people, like, I mean, like, I have trigger warnings for all sorts of stuff, assault and other things too, that I know will make friends uncomfortable. But across the board, I don't care who you are, man, woman, non-binary, queer, POC, white, it doesn't matter. Nobody wants to watch a puppy die on screen. And so, like, that's the first thing I will always say. And so, like, and like even watching it this time, it's so hard to watch. Like it's I know why it's important, but it's just like, man, you gotta really earn it. And they did. I feel like they did, but it's rough. And I know friends who saw that happen and stopped watching, and they didn't care how good it was. Like they couldn't go through with it. And I get it. I totally get it.
Right.
Oh yeah, it's tough enough like watching a Wes Anderson where a dog just always dies somewhere off screen usually or something like that. But this one's like, I mean, they do a pretty good job of it. Feels violent when he kills the dog, but
without
it also
you
don't really see it.
Yeah.
But when it cuts back to the dragged blood and the dog is curled
it's
up,
all the
with,
suggestions that are really
I mean,
rough.
that's brutal.
Like even kind of worse than seeing it, because your imagination could do a much better job of making it much worse.
Right.
Well, and they just do such a good job of the first 10 minutes with the dog. It's so cute that you are just like, I want to snuggle with this cute little pup.
Yeah.
But then when he starts killing people, there's not one moment where you're like, I don't know if he's justified in this. You're always like,
you're 100%
get him,
with
get him.
after that. Yeah, totally.
But okay, so let's dive into a few of the details surrounding the production of the movie. The original script of this movie, they wanted it to be an old man. So Derek Kolstad makes this script, and they get a studio on board, Thunder Road Pictures, and Basil Owanik, who's one of the producers, said, I don't think we should do that. He said, quote, instead we decided to look for someone who's not literally older, but who has a seasoned history in the film world. Already, you're off to a great start on your casting for this movie.
Totally.
And so Keanu, let's see, he signs on, and then he thought, hey, it'd be pretty cool if I could get Chad and David to come onto this movie and choreograph, but I secretly hope that they'll direct this movie because they've never directed a movie before.
Yep.
This is the debut, and so they do, and Keanu Reeves prepares for 8 hours a day, 4 months. 4 months, 8 hours a day. He's out there. This is the Tom Cruise thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like Keanu and Tom are in this weird zone where, especially if physicality is involved, they're going to go way above and beyond.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, we talked about in The Matrix how he had a neck brace on because he had surgery, and he's out there
He's
just
still training,
learning all the moves and stuff, and he can't even kick. Like physically is unable to kick.
Yeah.
Yep.
The guy's a machine.
Yep.
Well, actually, he's a human because he fights the machines for us.
That's true.
That's true.
Yes.
Yeah. We don't want to mix that up.
Yeah. And so then a couple more things here. The writer cited Alistair MacLean and Stephen King as influences on this story.
Cool.
Okay, I can see
MacLean
that.
could build a world, and King could surprise you by what the main character truly was capable of.
Okay.
Right.
Love it.
Yeah.
We're huge Stephen King fans, so anytime someone's like, I was inspired by Stephen King, we're like, okay, I'm salivating.
Okay, I like it
Let's
a
go.
little bit more.
And then while shooting a scene with a stuntman, Michael Nyqvist cut his head so bad that his ear was resting on his right shoulder.
How?
Oof.
Oh my gosh. How?
I mean, there's no
resulted-
bone in your ear. Like your ear doesn't have any bones
No.
on the outer part. So like,
That's nuts.
Yeah.
it's wild.
That's like Peter in the Garden of Gethsemane cutting off the bodyguard's ear
Yeah.
or the guard's ear. It resulted in 80 stitches. 80 stitches. And some of the last scenes had to be redone to hide a scar.
Holy crap.
Wow.
That's insane.
Wild.
And you don't know how it happened?
I didn't
From
see
what
how
you
it
saw?
happened, no.
That's nuts.
That's wild.
And then finally, this last quote by Chad Stahelski to set the table before we jump into the plot. If you're clever with the story and clever with the action, they can fuse together. We don't see any real separation that the story stops and then we just wow you with action. If it all fits and weaves together and helps you love the character, that's what we want to do. Demand more out of your action as an audience.
Amen.
Hell yeah. I agree.
Yeah. I feel like that's kind of a lot what you and I talked about in Resurrections with the action. Resurrections, right?
No.
Yeah.
We haven't seen Resurrections yet.
Revolutions.
Well, we have.
Revolutions. We recorded it last night, and we can't remember the title of the movie.
But I feel like that's what we talked about a lot in that movie. We just really loved the action, and we just feel like because it continued to tell the story rather than just be flashy. Of course, it's a little dated, but it just like it held my interest the whole time, and it always does, and it always surprises me that it does. So.
And it's always just, we've been railing on this ever since we started this podcast, but it is just so nice to watch action sequence where you could pause it and you could say, okay, this character did this, and that resulted in this, and that happened.
Yeah.
And I saw it all happen, and I'm not putting together the pieces and guessing what happened.
Yeah.
Right.
It's clear.
And even though, like, John Wick is fast, it's not like they're
But you
they're
can
not
always
doing
follow the through line, though.
Right,
yeah, exactly.
right.
And they're not doing these long, like, Children of Men style shots, but the shots are still on average longer than like any action movie that's come out 10 years prior, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they're just like, it's quick, but you could still know exactly where he punched him, what he did. Well, he's not punching, he's shooting.
Right.
He does some punching. He does some.
A little bit of punching. That's one of the.
There's more
that's another
shooting
thing.
than punching, though. That for sure.
Right. This is where they coined the phrase "gun fu,"
Yeah.
and I love that because truly, when you watch all three of these movies, I think actually in the third one they go a little outside the realm of guns a little bit to mix it up. But he's going through the club at the red circle in this movie. And he has spots where it would be obvious to maybe punch or instead of kicking a guy in the foot and then shooting him in the head, he shoots him in the foot and shoots him in the head. And it's like a dance.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
It
kind
really
of
is.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We like John Wick, folks.
Yeah. Yep, we sure do.
So let's jump on the movie here.
I see your first note is long hair.
Long hair.
I think we said this at the beginning of the whole Keanu adventure with Bill and Ted that, well, I'll speak for myself. I love the long hair. I think
Same.
right now, present day Keanu is peak Keanu.
Agreed.
Yeah,
He looks so good with the long hair and the beard. And in watching this movie, because it's been a little bit since I've rewatched John Wick, it's like, his hair gets even longer. How long can it get?
Yeah. I mean, chapter 4, just the poster, I'm like, I think that's as good as he's ever looked, but we haven't even seen footage from it.
True.
No. Yeah, that's
It's
true.
going to blow us all away, I'm sure.
I'm excited
as-
for it.
When
It'll
we
be
saw
my
that
first
Matrix
opportunity
trailer.
to see a John Wick in the theaters, because
Yeah.
I've
be so
seen them all.
exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. This was the only one I haven't seen in theaters because I was able to catch the next
I've only
two.
seen the third one in theaters.
Yeah, but audiences will hear about that later. But we wanted you to know, Matt.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So this is peak Keanu on looks, peak period.
Sure.
The next,
Yeah.
10, 20, probably 30 years. Because, again, I hate to keep bringing up Tom. No, I don't. I love it. These men don't age. I don't know what water they're drinking or something. But,
Scientology.
well,
I don't know.
let's not get into that. Yikes.
Yikes.
Yeah. So, starts off, John Wick, this car is rolling, and then it smashes into something really slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Keanu gets out, and he starts watching a video.
And he's bleeding out.
Okay, I'm in.
Yeah. Like,
how
all
did
right.
this guy get here?
Yeah.
Like-
And it's a video of presumably his partner, his wife. They're on a beach. He's recording her. She looks so beautiful. They both look so happy.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, he's about to die.
Yeah.
How did he get here?
Yeah. This is like the oldest trick in the movie handbook, but yet
Right.
I'm compelled here, right? Like I'm a
Right.
sucker for it because I immediately go, well, how did we get here? I need to know.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I am remembering I actually attempted to watch this movie the year it came out because it was on Amazon or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, Dad, I've heard that this movie's good. We should watch it. So this first scene happens. And as you know, with my parents' Wi-Fi and internet situation, we weren't able to load the rest of the movie.
At least that's all you saw
That-
for
that
like
was-
a long time.
All I saw until the next January
Oh my
when I went to
gosh.
Ecuador, and I was like, oh, I can watch this now.
You can find out why why he got there.
But we see John Wick at a graveyard, and we're introduced to Marcus, who's played by Willem Dafoe.
Mm-hmm. And again, like I always forget he's in this too.
Yeah, I totally
Always.
spaced. And like I'm a big Willem Dafoe fan, like from The Green
Yeah.
Goblin to Boondock
yeah.
Saints, though that hasn't aged well at all. Do yourself a favor. If you loved Boondock Saints, reevaluate, but also never watch it again because it will not hold up. It is a bad movie. It's very sexist. It has not aged well. It's just bad. It's just bad.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But like Willem Dafoe, I love. I will love watching him chew the scenery. I will always say about him that the Green Goblin scene where he argues with himself in the mirror in Spider-Man is a masterpiece. There's no scene
Yes.
in the history of comic book movies like that scene. It is just, I will watch that scene over and over again before I'll watch the whole movie. And I love that movie, but like it's just a masterclass in how to play a villain who is just lost. It's just so good. And so like to see him here, and he's so reserved in this movie most of the time. He's actually cheeky and kind of fun later in the movie. Like I like this side of Willem Dafoe. He was very good as Marcus in this.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just curious because I really don't know. Has he ever done a bad performance? I know he's in movies that have been bad, but I've never
don't
seen a
think
movie
so.
that he's done bad in.
No, I don't think so. I don't think he's done him. Like again, I would argue that he's been in bad stuff, but his performance in that bad stuff was never the reason that stuff was bad. It was always any other reason than that.
Right. And he's one of these guys that just he always gets what the tone of the movies are.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like Green Goblin, that's a great example where someone could play that much bigger or much quieter.
Yeah, and he's like right there in the middle, like
Yeah.
And I can hear his voice in my head. Like I consider myself a kind of a scientist myself. Like that whole like the dinner scene with Aunt May with the fork. I remember that whole movie because of him. In the same way that like Spider-Man 2, Alfred Molina's performance is legendary in that film. Yeah.
So
anyway,
nice they brought him back. So nice they were doing it twice.
Right. Exactly.
And by now we've seen it.
By now we've seen it and we've all loved it, I'm assuming.
I hope.
I hope so too, God. But like going back to the plot, like what's really interesting about this part of the movie is John, for the first 10 minutes, John Wick probably says 10 words total.
Yeah.
Like everyone else is talking when there's talking, but also in the first, I would say 15 minutes, it's maybe a page of dialogue, maybe two, like not a lot. And I think it's just so meditative, the whole experience. And like, so we're at this funeral, we get to see, John coping, and we get glimpses into what has happened here. We're eventually told, that his spouse had some kind of terminal disease and knew this was coming eventually, and they did everything they could while they could. And then eventually she just like it something killed her. We don't know quite what, but like some kind of illness has killed her. And now John is just trying to live a life, sort of like, we've all been through grief on some level. And like the tone, the blues, all of the blues in the palette, like just inherently conveys this sadness. And then again, just the way Keanu carries himself, you know, the disheveled look, the way he walks, the way he moves. Like I did as a science experiment, like looked at Keanu in the first scene and like looked at Keanu in like the last scene, and like there's just such a stark difference between those people. And I just love all of the setup that this first 15 minutes does.
Yeah, and they do a really great job too of just visual clues of grief as well, where like he's in the bathroom and all of her stuff is still there, as if she's about to come in and also start brushing her teeth, or like her when he gets coffee, her mug's still there, and then like he sleeps with her, I think it's her bracelet by his bedside. Like it's I think does a really good job too of showing like this just happened. Yeah. Like there hasn't even been time for him to like even think about doing something about these physical things, which he probably hasn't even thought about yet.
Yep.
And it's like, how can you even think of it? And because this performance is so good too, it's just, you really feel the grief.
Yeah. Let's all cry for a moment.
Well, and what really got me is what comes next is like, so we get all these just kind of like vignettes of him experiencing his grief. And then they cut to the wake and the room is full and he's looking out the window and not really interacting. And then like the scene just transitions and it's empty. And then there's a doorbell and there's this delivery and it's this dog from a kennel. And it does the tropey but appreciated thing of like opens a letter. We hear his wife's voice and she's telling him, you know, here's this puppy. I want you to live your life and I want you to care for something because I know you need to love something. And like in that moment when Keanu is done reading the letter and like kisses the letter and then starts to cry into it, this is the scene where I'll go, oh, he's wooden. He's stiff. Like that scene is heartbreaking. And like I've cried like that. I recognize that level of hysterics. Like I've been that sad. I've been that upset. Yeah. And it's just like, and again, that whole scene too, from everyone disappearing to the delivery, like he says a couple of words to the delivery person and then it's all silence for the most part. And then there's this dog and then it's just him. Like, and then the vignette of him living with this dog is just so adorable. Like, clearly this is a man who has never raised an animal before and doesn't know quite what to do. The cornflakes and the dog bowl, like all that stuff is really great too.
And I love that, which I'm sure so many people do this, where they get an animal and then they're like, okay, but the animal does not sleep on the bed. And then pretty immediately it's like, okay, you can come sleep on the bed. How could I ever deny you that? It's like not even John Wick can not do that. It's also so cute.
Like, I'm sure it's all the dog trainer, but like that scene where he's like setting up the towel or the blanket on the floor and the dog lays down and John lays in the bed and they cut to his perspective looking at the dog. And the dog's head is just on the floor looking at him. Like it's such a good scene. Like they are milking this.
Oh yes, they are.
They are absolutely milking this and like and I think I had known going into it, like we'd both known the dog stuff was coming, but like watching it, I'm going, oh, they're so evil. This is so well done. Yeah. This is so perfectly like, you know, nudging towards like, this can't last. Something's going to happen.
It's too good to be true. He can't be okay.
Yeah.
Because we're too early in the movie.
So then the next day, or I mean, in the future, whatever.
Yeah. It's unclear the timeline.
Yeah.
Right. He goes to a gas station.
Actually, I think it is the next day because in the backseat of his car, he's a ton of animal stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like he had gone shopping.
He's going shopping.
Yeah.
Because a thing, it's so specific, but I do really like that he pours the cornflakes and he says, we'll get you kibbles tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it is like, he's never had an animal, but he's not stupid. He understands they need food.
Like the dog, like he wakes up in the morning and he gets the paper and the dog runs out to go to the bathroom and he's like, oh. Right.
But it's like, I don't know. He's really selling it.
Yeah.
Pulls up to the gas station and this car comes up blaring music. The lyrics are, gotta get that money, over and over and over. And what we'll discover is like this Russian mob crime syndicate that, well, we don't know that at the time, but this guy gets out and he looks at John Wick's beautiful car. I don't know anything about cars, but I know that thing is sweet.
Yes.
Yep.
And he goes, man, this thing is awesome. And he says, like, what do you want for it?
Yeah. How much?
John says, oh, she's not for sale. And then in Russian, he says, everything's got a price, bitch.
Yeah.
And then
And he says in Russian, I'm nobody's bitch.
Yeah.
no, well, he actually says, not this bitch.
Oh, not
That's
that. Which is so much
I had to
funny.
write that down. And then the guy's like so offended. And it's just crazy. Now, obviously, these are made up, but it is crazy
Right.
that had this moment not happen, we could imagine a world where John Wick works through his feelings and never
Yeah.
returns to this life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
throughout
absolutely.
this movie, they keep on saying, are you back from retirement? He's back. And
And they make it very clear too that it's not easy to leave because
Yeah.
it's such a dangerous job, and he did it.
Yeah.
yeah, like
like,
he
left.
pulled it off. He did an impossible job. And it's kind of it's a subtle twist, but it's a nice twist because a lot of times these movies are always like the past, you can never escape the past. That's like what these movies are about when it's, guy retired from spying.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's cool that this one's like, no, he chooses to go back because they basically killed his wife
Yeah.
in his mind.
Yeah.
And
It's subtle, but it's a nice twist. That's
Yeah.
another reason I think that the series feels fresh.
yeah. And I think the casting of the son is so, I don't know, it's just the act, he just knows what he's doing, and it's just like perfect that he's young, like he looks like he's maybe in his 20s or even maybe early 30s, like he just looks really young. And you learn very quickly that he's had everything handed to him on a silver platter
Yeah.
from probably through illegal means, and is probably
Oh,
one day
definitely.
set to
We don't have to paint
he's a
these guys
little-
like maybe they're okay. Those are bad guys.
He's a little Anthony Soprano Jr. a little bit.
Yes.
Where he's like, I want it all, don't want to work for it, so I'll just take what I want.
Yep.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
like it's clear that in this moment, like he's annoyed that he can't have what he wants, but then his backup
Yeah.
Victor like grabs
Yeah.
him by the shoulder, like, what are you doing? And then apologizes because like he has some
Yeah.
sense, and he's like, we can't just do this. And like they leave, and like John kind of just shakes it off, finishes filling up his gas. And then what I love about this next transition is like, so he goes to this like airfield where he can drive around, which is pretty common. I used to
Yeah.
watch a lot of Top Gear and the Grand Tour, and like, those guys always did a lot of like car testing on giant airfields and stuff. And even their famous racetrack was on an airfield. And so, but what's really funny to me is there's no transition of him dropping off the dog before going to do this. Clearly he did, right? Because they never cut to the dog. The dog doesn't get sick or
Yeah.
hurt. But like the whole time that scene's happening, I'm like, but where's the dog? What's going on with the
That's what I
dog?
think of too.
And
I've
like,
never
Yeah.
thought that. That's
And
hilarious.
like you could, the acting's so good here too with him because he's doing this because he's angry, he's
right. He
grieving,
needs to vent.
and
Yeah.
he's venting all of this, and you are just thinking like, I hope the dog's okay, because he's not thinking about the dog at this point.
Yeah, but the scene is so relatable, like him driving in circles and like spinning out and then driving at the bulldozer full speed and then slamming on the brakes at the last possible second while screaming. Like it's so visceral that he's hurting, but he's trying to find a way to let it out. And then he goes
And it's,
home.
I mean, for a guy who's violent, he's not doing it violently,
right. Like there's this.
which is
Yeah.
crazy.
It shows this understanding that he knows that violence isn't always the answer, even though he
Yeah.
himself can be very violent. This moment teaches us that. Like he's letting go of that violence, even though he used to be that violent person.
Right.
But then we go back to his house, and there's this lovely scene of him getting ready for bed again. And the dog looks at him again. It's the same shot, and he's like, "All right, come up." And then they fall asleep, and then like the dog wakes him and starts barking and runs downstairs. And I couldn't remember the order of events when I was watching it today. I was like, "Oh no, is this the scene? I bet this is the scene."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And lo and behold,
Don't say it, Matt. Don't say it.
the dog is
Please say it isn't so.
the dog is barking because there's been a home invasion. As soon as John gets downstairs, he gets clubbed with a bat. And it's made pretty apparent pretty quickly that these masked thieves are possibly the folks he saw earlier, which is, of course, through the course of the events is revealed. They beat John within an inch of his life. Someone yells at one of the thugs to shut up the dog. And so they do that by hitting the dog.
Yeah.
And you hear the yelp. And then like, you know, this Alfie is the actor, Alfie Allen, Yusuf, takes his hood off, reveals his face, which is also very dumb. Why did you wear the masks then?
But it's also like he is stupid.
He is stupid.
He thinks he's invincible, so it means nothing to him. He probably, because he's probably conceited, like, I want you to know who's like to look into the eyes of the guy that's stealing your car.
Right.
He's
and
thinking that this is like just some rich guy who has a nice car.
Yeah.
That's all he's thinking about.
He has no idea who he's attacking. And like they keep saying in Russian, find the keys. Where are the keys? We found them.
Right.
And then they just knock him out. And then they cut to the scene that Jordan alluded to earlier, or not Jordan, Micah alluded to earlier, of like, you don't see the dog crawl over to him, but you see a trail of blood and the dog curled up under John's like chin.
Yeah.
Like in like very light panting that then stops as John is waking up. And it's like,
right.
It's brutal.
That is like the hurtful cherry on top of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Of like, why'd you have to show that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we see him bury the dog.
And then it jump cuts to the shovel hitting the ground, which is like so stark. And I think it's such a great way to like frame it. And then it's him, with a small box burying this dog.
And he does this before he even checks his garage to see that the car's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, obviously his car is gone, but it is like, that doesn't even matter at this point. They basically just killed my wife.
Yeah.
Sure, they can have just take my car. I will get it back. And so he does check though, the car is gone. And then is that when it also cuts to them going into the shop, Aurelio's shop?
Yep.
Or does he do something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a great so this is like probably number 2 with a bullet for me of why this series is so good. Because they set up his reputation so well without doing any like exposition dumps or anything like that. They just set this tone. Because in this scene, they come in and they go, "Hey, we got this car, new plates.
I need you to get a new
can you get clean
VIN
plates,
numbers.
VIN number, all that stuff." And Leguizamo's like, "Whose car is this?" And they go, "I don't know, it's some guy." And he says, "I'm not taking it." And they go, "We own you." And he says, "Okay, I don't care." And they're like, Vito, they say something about Vito, and he said, "This doesn't matter what Vito likes or doesn't like. He'll understand. I'm not taking this car."
Yeah, because he immediately knows, because arguably, I'm sure Aurelio had help in getting John this car, so he knows immediately. And he's like, I am not touching that. And then like that scene then starts to cut between John arriving and talking to Aurelio. Aurelio pours him a drink, and like Aurelio is trying to skirt the issue as best as possible, and John isn't having it. He's like, who took the car? Where are they? Like, who is it? And like, while cutting back to the scene with Aurelio telling him, "No, get out! Get out of my store now!" Like, he punches the kid in the face, and like they draw the gun on him, and like I love this scene with John Leguizamo. He pulls the gun. He's like, "Oh, are you gonna shoot me? Well, go ahead and shoot me. I'm not taking that car. It's not worth it. Shoot me." And like that freaks everybody out, and like it's just
and you're just like, who is John Wick? Who is this guy?
Yeah, and like it's just cutting between these two scenes, and I love that cinematography. That like it's the same location but 2 different time periods at the same time to tell the story.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Really
and
great.
And then we have, I mean, this is one of the best moments of the whole movie, where Michael, can't remember his character name.
Aurelio. Oh, sorry, Vigo, right?
Or
Vigo, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Vigo. He gets a call from John, and John's like,
no, from Aurelio.
From Aurelio.
Wait, John Leguizamo is.
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. Character name Aurelio.
Oh, okay. I was kind of like trying to remember who. Okay. It's so that's the problem with movie podcasts.
Yeah.
So Aurelio calls Vigo because, or the other way around, but Vigo's like, "You punched my son. Why did you do it?" And he says, because he stole John Wick's car and he killed his dog. And then he has a 1-word response, which he's this big bad guy. You can already tell he's like an intense guy. This guy's someone you don't want to mess with. And being told that his son stole and killed the dog, he just responds, "Oh," and hangs up the phone.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, so now my son's dead.
Yeah.
My son killed himself. Like, basically, is what he said.
Yeah. And the whole movie, he's struggling with. I love his character because he's like, I don't want to do this. I just can't have someone going around killing my son. But my son is wrong. He's
Yeah,
just
my son
like,
is an idiot.
Yeah.
like, son's stupid. But just because he's my son, I have to do the wrong thing, and I know it's wrong.
Yeah. It's
love
great.
that.
It's good.
And what I love about the resolution of the scene too is like, Aurelio asks him what he's gonna do, and John Wick just ignores him and goes, "I need a car." Like,
Right.
it's clear like he's not gonna answer to anyone this whole movie. He's just gonna do what
No.
he feels he needs to do, and they set that scene pretty early here too.
Yep.
Oh, now I'm putting together the conversation where you were saying John and how me saying John is confusing in a movie with John Wick.
Yep.
Yes,
I was
correct.
just...
Yeah.
Multiple
Because in
Johns.
my head, even though it's called John Wick, I just think it's like, oh yeah, then Keanu does this, Keanu does that.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
it has that, it's like, you know, when you're, again, talking about Mission Impossible, it's like Ethan Hunt. No, you're talking Tom does this, Tom does that.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
they're bigger than the movie, and the movie plays to those strengths.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's not a bad thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can be a bad thing, but so they have this conversation about the Baba Yaga.
The Baba Yaga. Yeah, when his son
Or
comes
Baba
back
Yaga.
from his adventure in Atlantic City.
Yes. Yeah.
And like I love that he pours his son the drink. And then hands him the drink, and his son is holding the drink. He knows his dad is being weird, and he clinks the drink, and his son drinks it, and he's like, "Oh, okay." And then he punches his son in the gut. His son vomits up the drink, and then he just throws a rag at him and goes, "Clean this up." Like he just like the whole setup, like it's just like that scene is designed for you to be kind of charmed by Vigo a little bit. Like, oh, okay, I see what kind of like horrendous person this guy is.
Yeah, and then so he's basically in the scene trying to get his son to understand how big of a mistake he just made. And I can't remember exactly what he says, but he's describing he's comparing him to the boogeyman, all this stuff, and eventually his son responds, "Oh." Like he also responds with that.
He finally
like, oh, I
understands.
did make a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's saying "oh," and
Yeah.
I have heard. I don't know if this is confirmed by the directors, but I've heard that the O's are kind of like a response and a play on the fact that in Keanu movies he always says "whoa,"
Whoa. Yeah.
because he does not say "whoa" in this movie, but everyone in response to him is always going "oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
oh." So kind of a fun wink and one of the many kind of Keanu / Matrix references that begin throughout this series.
Right. For sure.
Then we have the first like real action set piece of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Vigo sends a ton of guys
Yep.
to John's house
Uh-huh.
to take care of him.
But right before that, what I love is that he actually calls John because he has John's number.
Yeah,
He looks up. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
John, he's like, he calls John trying to appeal to his good side and be like, you know, we're civilized men. Let's talk about this. My son made a horrible mistake. John, and he says nothing, hangs up. And then the guy played by Dean Winters, Avi, says, "What did he say?" And he goes, "Enough." Like, because he said nothing. And then like the rest of that scene plays out as it cuts back and forth between them talking and Keanu taking this giant sledgehammer to his floor. And it turns out he's got the secret stash of gold coins that we don't know the purpose of yet and a ton of weapons. And we're like, oh, okay, I'm starting to understand now. This guy was a secret assassin. Shit's about to go down.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love that montage too. Just there's nothing better than Keanu with a sledgehammer breaking concrete.
No.
Yeah.
And he's like scooping it away. He
With his
doesn't want to do
hands.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the concrete shows how much he was committed to being normal.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
he always knew that at some point it could bite him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that he would
Like always
need it
being
again.
prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like Vigo calling him is a bit more of a formality than anything.
Yeah.
Just like, I'm just acknowledging that this thing happened.
Yeah.
Care to talk about it? Just hangs up the phone. Like, that's it.
Yep. And then like we get to the scene that Mike was alluding to where like John's about ready to head out. Like he's got his stuff together and he hears something. And like we see people sneaking into the house, and like like Michael was saying, this is the first big action set piece. And holy hell, what a way to start this kind of movement in the movie.
Yeah, it's like 10 or 12 guys, I think, and you learn just so fast. The whole gun fu thing is like really showcased in this scene, and it like John Wick is definitely a person where it's like all I really need is one shot. Like, it's like, I get him in the head, that's it. Go to the next guy. Get him in the head, that's it. Like, it's just picking them off.
Which, by the way, fun thing for any listener, or you too if you haven't checked it out, but you can see footage of Keanu training for the John Wick movies.
Oh.
And it is cool. Because he just, there's some where he's, just practicing aiming and stuff and using, like, real guns or live rounds and stuff. And then there's others where he is quickly moving from place to place, jumping around corners and shooting things. Quite the marksman too. Wow. I will say the training shows and just the way he holds and uses the gun in this movie. It's like, this guy's comfortable. He knows what he's doing. This is above and beyond.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And like, what's really interesting about this fight scene is like you said, long shots, following the action, knowing like he starts upstairs and you could watch him down the stairs, shoot people through the stairwell and like, flipping people and like so precise. And the reason I remember that it's 12 guys is because at the end of this scene, he calls for a dinner reservation for a party of 12.
Right.
Yep. And so like, I just also like the lore of this world gets much heavier in the next two movies, but the small glimpses we start to see from this scene is just so, and like the fighting here is just so smoothly done. He's not perfect, but it's clear he's a professional. Like he doesn't have any major missteps, but like he has to fight one guy hand to hand until he can get a gun or reload or whatever. But like the scene that stays with me the most is when he like flips the guy onto like the kitchen island. And then the other guy comes and he fist fights the other guy, then spins around, like shoots the guy through the chin. Or breaks his neck maybe on the island.
I think he does.
Punches his neck down and breaks it.
Oh,
and then switches to the other guy again. Like it's just the flow state of the action here is so well choreographed. Like it's clear this is a guy who worked on The Matrix. This is a guy who knows how to shoot action. Like it's just so different from any, like Micah was saying, anything we'd seen in the last 10 years for so long. The action was all shaky cam and like, can't really follow it and big explosions, which I like that stuff too. But like this is artful in a way that like I just never expected.
Yeah. I think what they do a really good job in this movie too is like using the limitations of an environment, like how that affects the fight. This one is probably like the most open fight because his house, the floor plan's pretty open. But one of the craziest parts is I think the end of this fight where he's wrestling with that guy with the knife and he like smacks the knife into him, but the knife comes out and he has to do it again. It's gnarly.
So gnarly.
Well, and this is the kind of stuff, this attention to the choreography. Feels like this could only happen when it's directed by people who have experience doing these things.
Right.
Because this has the same feeling in a lot of ways of a lot of martial arts movies.
Yeah.
Like Chinese movies, especially. Like you watch a Jackie Chan or a Yuen Wing-Pu movie or something like that. And like the choreography is so precise and the director's not just like, how can we just get a lot of coverage and edit it later?
Yeah.
This is like, no, this is all way planned out in advance. There aren't things they can cut to.
Yeah, and I even just thinking of the first Ip Man movie, how that first fight scene of Ip Man and that guy, I can't remember who he is, like in his home.
Oh, yeah.
And then fighting, like, they use the environment really well. They're constantly pulling things out of the scene to, like, fight with, and then they'll get another thing to fight with. And I think this series is really good at that, too, especially in the third movie when they're in that. It kind of in the beginning of the movie, they just do a great job of how the environment affects the fight.
Yeah, another wonderful martial arts kind of not trope, but something that those movies, when they're done well, are like like we were watching that Jackie Chan scene where he uses a ladder to fight all those guys.
Yeah.
Oh, such a good
Crazy
scene.
cool.
Such a good scene.
It's just like, this is so inventive.
Yeah.
And this movie does that.
Yeah.
So he fights all these guys, kills them all, of course, and then he calls a dinner reservation for 12, pulls out a bunch of gold coins.
Yeah.
And this is when the world opens up truly. And this is
A
what
little bit though. It is still
well,
like
yes.
snapshots. But
I just mean like this from this point on, it's like, okay, this is not just another action movie, not just another agent.
Yeah.
This is kind of, we're dabbling in fantasy. Not like hard fantasy, but kind of just,
it's fantastical though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
so these guys come over and they're like, you back at work, John? Or nice to see you, or whatever they're saying. And they start cleaning up the bodies.
He doesn't answer his question though.
He doesn't
He
answer,
just pays
no.
him and says like, "Have a good night."
Yeah,
Because he's going to answer that question later in the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah, he will. One of my favorite. That's one of my number one with a bullet favorite moments, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get
Yeah.
there.
But, so they start cleaning everything up, and I think it's probably just from seeing Pulp Fiction. Anytime they have to figure out how to clean bodies in movies
Yeah.
and like clean stuff up, I'm always like, yeah, this is cool. I like the details involved.
Oh, we
in
also
this.
didn't mention though, before that happens, the police shows up.
Oh, right,
Oh,
right.
right. That's right.
And
the
the
noise
guy-
complaint. Jimmy.
Yeah, and he's like, just like, "Oh, you working again, John?" And I don't think he even answers him, but he's
Yeah.
just like, "Have a good night."
Yeah.
And
he
that's-
says he's working through some stuff.
That's
Yeah,
right. That's, right. Yeah.
And he goes,
And
"All
I
right,
love-
I'll leave
Yeah.
you to it.
And they're and he
Yeah.
the police officer sees a body in the hallway.
It doesn't matter.
And
Yeah.
it's just like this is above my pay grade.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's great about that is, so right off the bat, they're just establishing we don't have to worry about them getting caught by the police.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like a detective having to figure this whole thing out. It's like, nope, that's out of the equation.
This is
That's not
like-
what this is about.
In this world above the law. Like
Yeah.
whatever is happening.
The law is not involved in the traditional
Right.
sense. Yeah.
Right. Like
There
we
are other
do
rules
find
we
out.
will learn later.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But then Marcus is given a hit.
Yeah, we get a personal visit from Vigo.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Vigo has decided, well, that didn't go well, so I'm going to put out a $2 million bounty on the extranet, on the internet, wherever you put out bounties in this world, and and then also pays a personal visit to Marcus, who he knows is friends with John, but is also a hitman, and goes, yeah, he's like, I have a phone. He's like, yes,
Yeah.
but I figured this required the personal touch, and like, yeah, he hires Marcus to go after John and kill him, and we're like, and I had forgotten enough of the movie. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess, does John have to kill him? I don't remember. Like, but I started to
Yeah.
be worried. Like, these friends are gonna
Yeah.
have to fight each other, and we'll get into that more. But it's cool to see this. Like, we get to see these different environments of where the rules lie, who follows these rules, how these people all know each other. Like, because you get more into John Wick's history in the next two movies, especially. But like
Right.
you like you were saying, Jordan, like we're really starting to see the lore come to life here in
Yeah.
these scenes.
Yeah. Around this time, we're having a montage of people gearing up to a Marilyn Monroe song, "Killing Strangers."
Marilyn Manson.
Or Manson, I mean.
Oh, okay.
Very
I was
different.
like, what?
Yes,
Yeah.
very different.
So
and I
this
think
is one of
I'm-
the two best song drops in the movie. Like, I love "Killing Strangers." It's one of the only good songs off that more recent album. And like the two places they use it in this movie, the here, and then we'll get back to it later. So good. It's so well done, and it's foreshadowing, which we don't know yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's okay. I'm gonna. I was gearing up to say the exact opposite.
Really?
Well, I was just not about the movie, but I was just gonna say I think I'm comfortable I'm not very familiar with Marilyn Manson's career, but after hearing this song, I'm like, I'm comfortable keeping it that way.
Well,
Don't like this guy's music.
Okay, so I'm not familiar with him either very much, but I think for this movie, it's over the top. So like, I think the song works.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
because the soundtrack as the movie progresses as well is like nuts.
Yeah.
It's just kind of all over the place. It's really intense. So it works for me.
Yeah, I mean,
I just thought we were gonna kind of dig on Marilyn, and I was ready to go, but
I mean, you can. I don't love his stuff. I grew up listening to a lot of his stuff and really liked it when I was younger. I think his newest album was kind of not very good or inventive, but that song I like, and I think it's because of this movie, and also a friend of mine has a burlesque act to it, and so I have pleasant memories attached to this song specifically.
Yeah.
there you go.
And I think, and like I said, I think because of the foreshadowing they use it for later in the movie, I think any song could have worked, but the song works just as well for what they used it for.
Yeah.
All right, I'm backing off my hill. I'm backing off my hill.
I just think it matches the tone of this movie.
It does match the tone.
Yes.
Definitely. And then we show up at the world famous Continental.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And what we're going to find about this place is it's a hotel for assassins where they can't, like, there's no killing on the grounds. There's no business conducted on the Continental grounds.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. And like we get the first of many, like the Killing Strangers was a foreshadowing, and then we get our second foreshadowing when we see Adrienne Palicki for the first time as Miss Perkins. Like, she smiles at John. She was checking in before him and says, "It's nice to see you, John." And like, so they established not only does he have a history as far as a reputation, but he's a history with individual assassins too. Everyone knows him.
Yeah.
Everyone's familiar with him.
Right.
And so, we get introduced to Lance Reddick. Reddick? Am I getting confused on
Chronicles of Riddick?
Lance Reddick.
Man.
Yeah.
But I love their interaction because John's just commenting on, like, this place has gotten a facelift. So it's like, oh, there's like the lore is deep.
There's a relationship
sucker
here
for it.
Yeah.
So it's like, what did this place look like before it was updated?
Right.
How were people before all this? It's just like, I got to know it. That's great.
Yeah. And then he goes into this green room that's at, like, I mean, literally, like, not a green room, but it's the color green. And he goes in, and it's this club, and that's where he talks to Ian McShane.
Yep.
And he's talking to him about what's going on.
Yeah.
And hoping that he can give him information. But as we find out in this scene, there's no business conducted on the Continental grounds.
Yep.
But he does help him a little. He gives him a tip.
Well, what I love is that this next moment, I can't remember the actress's name. Is she here on IMDb?
Oh, the bartender?
The bartender. So I know her from she was in Agent Carter. She played a, like, precursor to the Black Widow in Agent Carter, like another person from that program.
Oh, okay.
But she's really great.
The Bridget Reagan.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like, I love this scene because, again, it's world building. Like, she's so excited to see him. She kisses him on the cheek, pulls him in close. Like, clearly these two spent a lot of time together. Like, and it doesn't seem like romantic. It just seems like really friendly, like, which I love also. And like, they start to talk, and it's just a very casual conversation. Like, I love the world building. Like,
and it's
all
like,
of it pulls me in.
Yeah, and it just makes me wonder, like, okay, so if you get out of this game, like, if you're not an assassin anymore, I just assume you never go to the Continental again. Like, you have no reason to. So it's almost like her reaction to seeing him is like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I haven't seen you for, I think it's been 4 years, she says.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while, yeah.
And it is like, I never thought I'd see you again, because I thought, you were off living your happy life. But I think she does, like, her condolences, because everyone does know about what happened to him.
Yeah,
with his wife passing, but her acting and her reactions to stuff are very telling and interesting to the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this is where John finds out that the little shit is hiding at the Red Circle because he asks for a drink, he gets the usual, and then the cocktail napkin says the Red Circle on it, and he doesn't even drink the drink, he just takes off.
Yep.
And then we head to the Red Circle.
Yep.
And
I was just going to say, I love the layout of this place. It's so nonsensical, especially considering the building they show from the outside, I think, is a museum. Like, if you've not seen it, Patrick H. Willems does a video on, like, he walks to the locations of all the places in the John Wick movies and how they transform these buildings that aren't those buildings into these other buildings. And it's really fascinating. And you should watch that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I just love the layout of this place, like a club on the top floor, a sauna on in the basement, like a restaurant. Like it's just wild, the layout of this building. It makes no sense.
No, it doesn't. But it also is like, wow, that looks fun.
Yeah, totally.
And now we're in, the fourth movie in a row that we're covering on this podcast where John Wick is in some sort of club environment.
Yeah.
Well, maybe fifth, because I'm assuming in Matrix Resurrections, there's definitely going to be a club scene. There has
Must
to be.
Right?
Usually is.
Yeah, so the man is familiar.
He knows his way around a club.
So what I love, though, one of the best moments in this whole thing is before he goes in, he pulls a gun on the bodyguard.
Uh-huh.
And the guy's like, oh, hey, John. And, I don't remember the guy's name, but he's like, yeah, it looks like you've lost some weight.
He's like 60 pounds.
Oh, yes.
Why don't you...
The scene with Kevin
why don't
Nash.
you take the night off?
Yeah.
And Kevin's like, yeah, okay. Takes out his earpiece and leaves.
Yeah, that's it.
So I love this moment because Kevin Nash, for those who are uninitiated, was a famous wrestler. Many years wrestled under the name Diesel.
Okay.
He wrestled with Scott Hall, who was Razor Ramon. They were in the NWO back when WCW was a thing. Like, very well-known wrestler. And then became an actor. Had found some success. He was in the Thomas Jane Punisher movie. He'd been in a few other things. He was the guy in the Super Shredder suit. Fun fact in Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze.
Okay, cool.
He's the one who wore the Super Shredder suit, which was pretty cool. So he's always playing these big like bouncer-esque guys, and so like when I see him, I just light up because I have such fond childhood memories of him entertaining me in all these different roles, and so to see him play this Russian bouncer and like. Again, it's the world building, right? Like John, like you said, he's like, oh, you lost weight. Oh, you look good. You should probably take the night off. And like he immediately pulls out his earpiece and then he thanks him. Yeah, it's just, he just accepts it and leaves because he knows no matter what his boss is going to do to him, he'll still possibly be alive. With John Wick, there's no way he'd be dead. But they don't have to say that. They just establish it with this conversation.
Yeah. And so... It's established, I think, right beforehand that Yosef is in like the sauna area with his friends, drinking champagne, having a heck of a time. And when John goes in, I think it's is it Victor?
Yeah, he sees Victor and follows Victor in.
That's right. Yeah, and he's like, that guy's like just getting ready for a good night. Just probably got out of the sauna, ready to go in the sauna. I think he's like flossing. He's just ready to go.
It has one of my favorite camera moves because like Victor goes up to the sink and so we're on his left side and we're seeing the entrance and there's a guy by the door and the camera pans down a little bit as he leans forward to rinse. Yeah. And then it comes out and the door's swinging and the guy's gone. Like we hear nothing. There's no movement. That happens. And then like in the mirror, we see the guy behind him die and then that's it. And now game on. John Wick is here.
Yeah.
Right.
Then he takes him out.
Yep.
He gets his radio, and then chaos ensues. Gets his phone too. And it's so hard to describe everything that's going on, but we're talking, a half-naked man running through a club with strobe lights, music playing, and then intense fighting. I mean, to hit just some of my favorite moments, shooting a guy in a foot and making him lean forward, then shooting him in the head.
Yeah.
Another moment, slamming a huge man's head against the table and shooting him, I think 3 or 4 times.
That guy gets it a couple times.
Yeah.
And of course, when John Wick is chucked over the balcony,
and then gets up.
All of that, you're just like, if you are not into this, then I don't know what to tell you because this is as good as it gets.
Yeah.
Watching him fight his way through the layout of this place and like in the sauna area, like shooting and people like start to scatter. I'm like, I love that again. Alfie Allen, the actor playing Yosef, they show his character so well as being a sniveling brat. Like when the shooting starts, he grabs one of the girls and like pushes her in front of him. Like he's a sniveling brat, like clearly a bad human. And like they take every opportunity to make him seem worse. During the scene, his brother who scolds him earlier has a big fight with John Wick. He's the one who throws him over the balcony and like kind of bests him before John leaves, trying to chase him down. Luckily, one of the other lackeys like picks up Yosef right outside the club, and they take off.
Right.
But like,
and his first thing to do is to call Victor.
Yeah, his right hand man.
Yeah, and I forget exactly what he says to him, but pretty much John says he's dead.
Yeah, there are consequences or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and Yosef, the actor's reaction, Yosef, is just so good. He's just terrified.
And like just hangs up the phone. Like he doesn't even try to reason with him. He just hangs up the phone. He knows he's in trouble.
Yeah.
Well, and when he says that there's consequences, then the camera pans and we see the Merovingian, and he says, "Cause."
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Right. That's
and then
the
he
Matrix
does
tie-in,
a good like 5 minutes of words, like the way we just can't understand what he's saying.
Right.
And then that girl has the
Just talks
dessert.
a
There's an
lot.
explosion, and that's.
And then we go right back into John.
Then we go right back
Right,
in.
exactly.
I mean, we're about due for the Keymaker, so actually that worked
Yeah,
out
that's
pretty
true.
well. So John Wick is obviously injured
Yes.
How does
from this.
what is he? Who
He gets stabbed.
He gets stabbed.
Yeah,
Okay.
while he's fighting at
Yeah.
one point, his Yosef's brother stabs
Yeah.
him.
Got it. Okay.
And so he gets back to the Continental. What I love about Lance Riddick in this movie and in a lot of roles is he plays deadpan so well. And so like, but not deadpan as in unemotional, right? Like but just deadpan as in static. He's always just happy customer service, but it's always sincere. It's not like fake customer
Totally.
service voice. And John Wick arrives back and he's like, you appear to be bleeding. Yes. Is the medic in? 24? We're on 24/7, sir. Shall I send him up to your room? Yes. How about a nice bourbon as well? That'd be great. And then goes up and then it cuts to him being like sewn up by the doctor, trying to find out if he'll be able to fight. Gives him medication for the pain because he knows he's going to go right back at it.
Yeah.
I
I think he has like a couple different types of pills, but he pretty much is like, you're probably going to want to take this one.
Yeah.
Because this is the one that you take if you have to continue to fight.
And then this.
Yeah, and it is the actor who's the Keymaker in Matrix Reloaded. So this is like, okay, another crossover moment.
Yes.
that.
For those who couldn't remember that.
Which
it's
is
the same
definitely
guy.
not an accident. They probably had this role and like they both were like, hey, we would love you to do this role.
Right.
Because we know you'd be great at it. Yeah, I love that kind of crossover. And you're right. There's a lot more of that as the trilogy goes on. I'm a little sad that I'm not going to be able to talk about my favorite cameo besides the one I mentioned earlier with Jason Mantzoukas. But I'll have to listen to that episode because
You're probably talking about, Lawrence Fishburne, right?
his cameo
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
just the best one in the whole series. But anyway, this scene also after is like one of my favorite action scenes because it's where the cheekiness comes in a little bit. And when we start to see the bigger plot, so John's finally lying in bed, he's relaxing, and we see Willem Dafoe setting up on the roof across. He's setting up his sniper rifle, and he's looking in the window, aiming at John, and I'm like, oh God, I don't remember what happens here. And then he pans up, and we see Adrian Pilecki coming in because they commented offhand earlier that they were going to double someone's fee because they were going to break the rules of the Continental. It's Miss Perkins, and so he cleverly shoots the pillow, knowing that it'll get John to turn around and then and prepare him for the battle. And then Willem Dafoe's packing up and smiling afterwards. Like, I love this. And I was like, oh right, he helps him through the whole movie. Now I remember. And
right.
And I love that we they are best buds. All right, this is cool.
Yeah.
And then we get this.
I know.
We get this injured John Wick fight with Adrian Pilecki. She's such a good fighter, and
she's
been cast in
good.
a ton of stuff, and I love how snarky, and she's such an asshole, and
she kind of like the fight kind of feels dirty.
It does.
Like she's crawling all over
Well,
him.
at one point she presses in on his stitches, she knows he's hurting. It's very good. It's in close quarters, but you can still see all the action. You can see John is struggling, but he still wins out in the end. She can't stop him.
Yeah, and she's basically trying to crawl away, and he gets her in time.
I do love
and
that. I do love that
go ahead.
halfway through the scene, the phone starts ringing, and it keeps cutting down to
Yeah,
Lance
that's right.
Reddick, waiting for him to pick up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then after he finally subdues her a little bit, he picks up and he's like, Mr. Wick, we've had some noise complaints on your floor. Is everything all right? He's like, yeah, I'm just finishing something up. It's so the cheekiness here now is when it starts to ramp up. And then he's holding her outside and we hear a voice behind him. Do I know you? Yeah, I think so. He's like, oh, hey, John. And it's just a working class assassin. I think Harry was his name. And
I think so, yeah.
It's just could you actually do me a favor? catch and release, and like it's a term he immediately understands. Like he's gonna take her in, hold her hostage until the right moment, and then let her go. Like it's just, I love this lingo as the lore continues to build up.
It's well written too because it's easy to understand.
Yeah.
You know, they're not using like made up words
right.
or something. It's just like that's catch and release. Yeah, I know what that means. They don't need to explain it.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. It's great.
And, you know, speaking to your point about the phone call cutting back and forth, this, I don't think that I had remembered just kind of how goofy and tongue-in-cheek these movies are.
Yeah.
But watching it this time, I was like, oh, yeah, it's not like the sequels that do this. It's right off the bat. Yep. They're like, it's serious, but then they kind of get goofy in the ways I enjoy. Yeah. And I think it really, really works. But it's a little bit goofy. Like there's some comedic timing involved in some of these sequences.
For sure.
And, you know, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
We like that.
I like when movies aren't just dark for no reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
So, Oh yeah, I did make a note that the plot of this movie and everything that's going on is just a video game because he literally has like a base to go back to and get supplies and heal and stuff like that.
Well, it's funny
being the Continental.
It's funny that you mentioned that. If I could derail us a little.
Yes, please.
In what was it, 2019, they actually made a John Wick video game called John Wick Hex. It was a neo-noir action strategy game, turn-based, that is a prequel to these movies where John Wick has to save... I'm blanking on Ian McShane's character name now. But like the owner and the front desk person of the Continental, Lance Riddick, get kidnapped by the Hex, which is this like big like syndicate, and John has to go rescue them. And it's on just about every current platform still. Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One, which you can play on the current gen versions of those, and the Nintendo Switch. It's got like the cell shaded graphic style, and I've not played it, but after watching this movie again, I looked up the game again because I remembered it, and it got mixed reviews, but everyone I've talked to personally that I trust on the internet have said it's pretty good, and so I might actually pick it up this week and play it. It's only like $20. But it's like a prequel game to this series, and I think
that's cool.
It just builds out the lore more. It allows you to be a badass as John Wick. You can like slow time as you're making decisions. If you've played any kind of like tactics or strategy RPG, it's very similar to that. And I just thought it's fun that you mentioned that. You're right. This does feel very much like a video game, and then they did actually make a game. This came out in 2019, so it's already several years, and there's not been any kind of sequel. I don't know that it's sold particularly well, but I would be interested in more John Wick video games. I think it's a cool franchise, and it is a lush world. Clearly, like they're making a Continental prequel TV series, I believe, is in the works, and things like that. And so, like, I just think it's funny that you mentioned video games. Like, actually, there was a video game a couple years ago.
It's almost like it almost feels like it's, or what am I trying to say? Feels a little surprising that it takes until 2019 for a video game to come out.
Yeah. I
don't know anything about video games. I know they're hard to make. They're not easy. But like with how successful the first movie was, they just continue to be more successful. It's like, man, there should have been a video game like once they knew this first one was a hit. Like they might have been working on it for that long.
I think production-wise, that's just like not.
Yeah, it's not possible.
That's not the world we live in.
To make a really good game.
Yeah.
I mean, the development time tends to run long, and I think the idea was because by the time the second movie was in production is when they really knew it was going to be a franchise. But when the first one came out, they had no idea, and so I think
that's true. Yeah.
I think it just took a while. Also, like games have longer development cycles now than they used to. Also, like there's this saying that goes around online that I believe in, which is I want shorter games with worse graphics that take longer to make, because the idea is like people won't be overworked. Not everything has to look realistic. And I don't want games to be 50 hours. Who's got time for that anymore in real life? That kind of thing.
Right.
And so I think probably after once the second movie was greenlit and probably starting to shoot, they might have started developing this.
Yeah.
And then it just took till 2019 to come out.
True.
Yeah. It is very funny though that you mentioned that it's strategy and turn based though, because I'm assuming like right off the bat, John Wick game. Okay, it's gonna be a first person action shooter game.
Yeah, and it's not.
And
it's
that's
third person,
very
like you're
surprising.
top down choosing the act. But it makes sense, right? Because think about how John is really tactical. Like he doesn't just run and gun, right? He's running and gunning, but none of it is like he's not spraying and praying, as they say, right? Like he's calculated. And so for it to be more strategy based and having to pick each attack makes sense for the kind of combatant that John Wick is.
That's true. John Wick Hex, get it wherever you get your games, baby.
But yeah, and so like after this moment, like Harry just takes Miss Perkins in, and then we don't see Harry again until a little later. I love that like it got this vibe of like just dudes being dudes, right? Like, oh, you're all right, John? You need help? Like I just love that moment. It feels very silly considering what's going on, but is perfect for the moment and the tone they're trying to set.
Yeah.
And then I think we get to the priest section, right?
Right. So John,
isn't that next?
Yeah, because John during the scuffle gets Miss Perkins to admit where he can find, like, wants her to say where he can find the dad or the son, and she doesn't know, but she reveals where Vigo's stash is. It's at this church, which is a front for it. And then we get this great scene of John going to wreck house in this church.
Yeah, and there's little old ladies praying in the pews, and then a priest comes up and he shoots that guy in the kneecap, and it's great. They like when he falls down and he reaches out for a pew, you see like tattoos on him.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh, okay, like no part of this church
is real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At all.
Well, and he immediately starts swearing.
Yeah,
that's true. He does. Yeah.
Which I mean, of course, if I got shot, I would too. But it just they're obviously painting like, everyone's in on this.
Yeah.
This is not. This is not a place of worship, It's just a great moment. I love that.
I also love that this scene doesn't waste your time. Like after he shoots him, all of the guards stand up and he like picks them off one at a time, but it's just one to one to one to one, and they all drop. Like none of them get near him.
Yeah.
And then he drags this guy into the back. I also love like we get to see John Wick's humanity, right? Like he's killing all these thugs, but like the women in the back counting the money, he just lets them go because it's assumed that they're probably working for someone. They probably don't want to be there. They're hysterical, and he just lets them go. Like he wants to hurt. He mostly wants to hurt Vigo, and probably if the security guards didn't like try and come after him, he wouldn't have shot them either. But like they were gonna go for him. But like the women who are clearly unarmed and defenseless in that moment, he lets them go.
Right.
And like, and then like we get to see how scary he is. Like open the door. Oh, you don't know what he'll do to me. And like he's like, open the door. Like it's just. This.
Yeah, and I agree, like with the scene not being very drawn out, and I feel like there sometimes in action movies like this kind of does feel like the part of the movie where it might like slow down a little bit, almost like to catch our breath, and it's like no, we don't need to catch our breath. Let's just keep going and see what happens.
Yeah.
But the guy opens the vault and John burns it all.
He just burns it.
Yeah, he's like, what are you gonna do with it? And he's like, this, and just blows it up.
And then, and then, okay, wait, what happens right after that?
Oh,
so
then he goes to the
chases
rope.
down.
Yeah.
And that's when he's like chasing the car, and he has I don't know what type of gun it is.
Oh,
but
the heavy duty thing.
He like is shooting at it. I mean, it's like a like some sort of shotgun, but way more powerful or something. Because it's not like there's not explosions.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's pumping, makes the car crash, jumps on the hood. It's bulletproof, but he's just blowing through it.
Yeah.
Until Vigo eventually is like, wait.
Oh no, you're conflating scenes. So we're missing.
Oh, am I?
Yeah,
we're missing the part where like so he's shooting all these guys. He's taking out a bunch of folks.
Oh yeah.
The guy who threw him over the balcony is there trying to stop him, and then eventually gets away while he's shooting at everyone else and spins the car and hits John with it, knocking him out.
That's what it is. Yes.
And then
he's
John wakes
captured.
up. Yeah, and he's bound, and this is when Vigo and him get to start to have a heart-to-heart. They find.
So I skipped.
And they try to find a common ground. They're talking, and I love this schmoozy scene. Like it's really like John's tied up, but like, but this like they find the common ground that they're both like in the wrong place, the wrong time, trying to understand each other. And he's like, but John, are you back? And like my favorite line, yeah, I'm guessing I'm back is the best line in the whole
It's so
movie.
good.
Like he's let go. He's completely deranged. He just wants what he wants. And he's like, well, that's a shame. And they try to suffocate him and kill him. He fights his way out. Like my favorite part.
And that again, Marcus helps him.
Right.
with
My favorite
that.
thing is like they're trying to suffocate him and Marcus shoots the one guy in the shoulder and nicks the bag. And then he just like goes after them both. And it's such a good scene, kicks all their asses, gets out of the building. And then we get to the scene you were talking about, Micah, where like he sees them drive away. So he runs back in the building, runs the other way, gets to the other side, and literally stands in front of the car, shoots it, it crashes, jumps on the roof, shoots the guy in the driver's seat, is pointing it at Vigo. And that's when Vigo gets out. He's like, whoa,
it's
whoa,
so
whoa.
good. Because at the beginning of this movie, Vigo's telling us, or is saying like, I gave this man the impossible job and he did it.
Yeah.
And we're at this part of the movie where this man is basically doing everything he needs to do to make sure his son doesn't die. And he it's almost you can see on his face, like, for a moment, I thought I did it.
Yeah.
But it's probably as soon as he sees John with that gun shooting the car, he's like, oh, okay, I guess there's no way out of this.
Yeah,
Because he just is like, my
like,
son, you can go kill my son. He's at the safe house.
and not to, I mean, this is jumping way ahead, but that speaks to the moment, like at the end of the movie when there's the big car chase, which we'll talk about more in a second. But the whole time, Vigo's just like laughing, and he knows that it's over. He's
Right.
just like, I may as well enjoy the ride at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like whatever, I guess. And he's just kind of thinking that everyone's silly for thinking they're gonna get out of this.
Yeah. And what's interesting is like he knows that he has to do this to survive, and so he tells him. But at this point, it's clear that John is completely unhinged. He's completely John Wick has not lost it, but is like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes. Vigo's not quite there yet. He thinks he's still in control because he gave up his son, and now he's gonna go. We're gonna find out later. He's going to make plans to punish someone else who is the reason why his son's about to die. And then we get to see, I love when unnamed video games are in a game, in a movie that could be a video game.
Oh, yeah.
But before we get there, then we cut back to the hotel. We find out that, we get to see Harry still babysitting Miss Perkins. And of course, Harry lets his guard down. Miss Perkins is crafty.
Dislocates her thumb.
And escapes.
Yeah,
That's
always hard to
gnarly.
watch.
And then shoots him and takes his gold coin that John gave him to watch her and escapes. And we'll hear more from her later. But then, we get to see John planning to go into this place. And while he is, they keep showing inside. Clearly Yosef is a wreck at this point, and one of his friends is playing a video game very loudly. What's funny to me is he's got headphones on.
Right.
Playing the game, but the game can be heard. How, if he's wearing headphones, typically the headphones are like, why is he wearing the headphones then? What are the headphones for? If the game is playing over the TV speakers.
Right.
It's just things like that.
I'm not saying
video game
you're
logic.
wrong by any means, because I think you're right. But is there a chance that Yosef is reacting to just
The
the visuals and
be.
not the audio?
Could be, but we're still
hearing the audio,
game.
right?
But we're hearing the game.
Yeah. I think that's just them messing up.
The thing I hate most about loving video games as much as I do is whenever video games are featured in a commercial or a TV show or a movie, is you can always immediately pick out the issues. Like most video game controllers light up now on some level or another. Like the back of the PS4 and PS5 controllers light up. And so I'll see commercials with this guy playing a game, but his controller light's not on. And I'm like, all right, okay, I see. But I love this game that they're only showing for 30 seconds at a time. Might have been a real game. I have no idea what game it was. I couldn't peg what it was. But this Yosef's getting more and more like nervous, nervous wreck watching this game, even yelling at his friend, can you stop? All the while, John is picking off snipers, checking in as one of the snipers when they ask for reports, then picking people off. And then when Yosef is at his wit's end, yelling for him to turn it off, then his friend gets sniped by John Wick and all hell breaks loose.
Yeah. And this scene, I think I would expect to have been longer too.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's pretty quick.
pretty streamlined, to the point where then he's
And-
chasing out Yosef, and then the scene you were talking about, like,
Yeah. He just
He just
we don't
walks up.
even
The guy, he's like begging, and,
we don't
saying,
even
"I'm sorry."
really see it because we don't see his face.
Yeah.
Like they don't even give the guy the dignity, which I mean, obviously he doesn't have,
Yeah.
to like show us him dying.
yeah,
John just walks up to him, shoots him, walks away, job done.
Now this is smart too, and I'm assuming this is probably in the script and whatnot. So give credit to Derek on this. I just think it's smart that they didn't think to themselves, okay, this is, the guy we have to, even though we've seen how powerful and crazy and intense John Wick is, we have to figure out a way to level the playing field or to make Yosef all of a sudden like really good at knife
Yeah.
fighting or something
Right,
like
and
that.
they don't do
They're
that.
just like, nope, John
Yeah.
Wick shoots him, walks away. That's it.
Well, what I love about this moment too is like, because he's about to beg, he shoots him in the stomach and then just shoots him in the head. Like he doesn't even let him speak.
Yeah.
And then walks away, and he calls Marcus, and they talk, and he talks about how it's done, and he's out this time. They show him checking out of the Continental, and like all this time, you're like, oh, I guess the movie's about to end, right? But if you're looking at the time, like if you're in the theater, you think, oh, the movie's about to end, but watching it at home, it's like, oh, there's still 20 minutes. I wonder what else is going to happen. And like, it's really smart writing. Like this is meant to be a first resolution, a first ending. And like, he's checking out of the hotel. They give him a car to apologize for everything that happens with Miss Perkins, which is really funny. And then he's talking to his friend Marcus. He's like, he's going to just go. He's going to live his life. And then, they cut back to Marcus, and we see him suddenly surrounded by guys. And we find out that what Vigo was planning previously is to make Marcus pay, because he realized Marcus was helping John instead of hunting him,
Yep.
even though he was hired to hunt him.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Miss Perkins is there too.
Yep.
Working for Vigo now.
Obviously.
And they essentially torture Marcus.
Yep.
Before, I guess, putting him out of his misery.
No, but he breaks out and forcing them to kill him prematurely because he says, I'm going to go out on my own terms.
Yeah.
Right.
So he gets that arc where he gets to say, like, it's my own terms, and then he gets shot in the head.
Yeah, and even when they shoot him the first time and he's like clearly bleeding out, he's like, I told you. And then he shoots him a bunch more times. And then this is when I believe Vigo calls John to tell him what he did.
Yes.
And John immediately spins the car around to rush back.
Yes.
And then gets there after his friend is already dead. And like, oh, I see where this is going. Now John has a reason to kill Vigo as well.
Yes. Yeah, it's just it's efficient storytelling. So is it after this Miss Perkins is wrapped up?
So what happens is John is there, and then then they cut to Miss Perkins getting a call and having to report somewhere, and that's when we find out that she's violated the Continental. Ian McShane is going to take her out because he's revoked her pass to the Continental, and then he calls John, and he's like, I'm not supposed to take sides, and we're supposed to remain neutral.
Right.
And that's why I'm not telling you that a certain someone has chartered a helicopter at this dock at this time. And then John goes after him.
Yep. Yeah. So then we get the another resolution, like that other wrap up.
Yep.
So oh wait. Yeah, that's just the next part, right?
I don't know which part you're about to say.
When John goes to Vigo.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we talked about Perkins getting killed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just said that.
Yeah.
So that's like the car chase scene that you were talking about, Micah.
Yep.
Yeah, big, nice car chase scene. And there are shots where it is very clear that Keanu is behind the wheel.
Yeah.
And it is not a stunt
Yes.
double.
Absolutely.
I'm sure there are many shots that he did not do, but he's doing a lot.
Yeah.
I read that somewhere somebody said, I don't know if it was him or the directors, that he did around 90% of his stunts for this movie.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
I mean, that's crazy.
Awesome.
That's really cool.
But like that shot where the guy's behind a barricade and he's shooting him and he drifts the car around so that he can shoot him.
Yeah. And
I mean, get out of town.
it's so good. And like this whole time when he's chasing like what's his name? Dean. The actor's name is Dean. But Avi is
Avi, yeah.
scrambling. Does anyone have a gun? Someone shoot him. What's going on? And the entire time Vigo's just laughing at this point. He's like,
Yeah.
He
and
knows,
he gives him his gun.
He knows. Well, my favorite thing is he does the cheekiness is back. Like when they've already crashed, they can't get out. they also crashed into John, but John's repositioning. Avi's like, do you have a gun? And he goes to hand him his gun, and then he pulls it back, and then he hands it, pulls it back, right. And then Avi grabs it and goes to try and stop him, and of course gets murked by John Wick. And like that one's really good too. Like he shoots him, and then he comes around and turns the car into him and puts him like through the window or whatever. Like it's just
it's so brutal. I mean, there's one guy he hits, and as he's going over the roof, he's shooting him.
Yeah, as he's rolling over the roof. Yeah.
But then now it's the last fight, right?
Yeah,
we're talking fist fighting now.
Yeah, it's final battle. This is the worst rain I've ever seen in movies. Like it's clear that they're being hosed, which is a shame.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
But especially later on in the scene when they're sitting on the ground, like it's clear someone's standing at like 30 miles with a big hose, like just spraying. But either way, yeah, this is like John gets out of the car. It looks like he might be out of ammo, and this is where Viggo goes, "No more guns. It's just us.
Yeah.
Just fists."
Yep.
And John repeats him, "Just fists. No guns."
Yeah.
And then they fight. They fist fight. Eventually, Viggo pulls out a knife.
Yeah.
I will say, I think this is like, and maybe I'm alone on this, but I do think this is the worst part of the movie on a personal level.
Is it anticlimactic to you?
It's very anticlimactic, and I once saw there. I don't watch these anymore, but like honest trailers on YouTube.
Yeah.
They had the director on to like review their honest trailer of this movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they paused it, and the director Chad was like, because they made fun of the final fight, and he's like, yeah, I mean, to be like totally honest, when you've done that much in the movie, you kind of just have to like turn on rain and have people punch. He himself is saying like, I know it's not very good.
Yeah. There's not much to do. Oh, I did forget to mention before, very briefly, when Willem Dafoe's character Marcus was being tortured, they played Killing Strangers again. Like during that whole setup.
That's right.
And so like that's how the first time they played it was when he was there, and then they played it a second time. Like when he was being hired, they played it, and then when he was being essentially fired, they played it. And I thought that was really good foreshadowing. I would agree that this final scene was anticlimactic, but that said, I wasn't disappointed. I think it's fine. I didn't feel negatively about it. Also, I agree. Like there's got to be a come down eventually, right? Like, and considering the final fights in the other movies, which y'all will get to, like those I feel like are almost too comical or cartoony by comparison in the opposite way,
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Not that that's a bad thing either, but yeah, I would agree with you, Micah. I think that it's a little anticlimactic, but I like that we get to see them kind of like scrap. Like they're both at their wits' end. They're both hurting. They've both got nothing left in the tank. And even when Viggo pulls out the knife, like it's very, like they fumble. This isn't choreographed in the same way because they want to show these two men are at the end of their rope. They've got almost nothing left to give.
Well, and I mean that's kind of just an action movie problem. It's hard to make the last fight, the very last fight, the best.
Right.
It's rare that you have an I Am Iron Man snapping fingers moment where you're like, oh yeah, that pays off 23 movies. Cool. That is cooler than anything else.
Right.
You rarely get that.
Correct.
So it's just kind of like, but we're here, we're analyzing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change how I feel about this movie.
No, not at all. What I love about this is like after that happens and he gets up and starts to walk away, it jumps to past the point that the movie started. Usually they bring you all the way back to that point, but this jumps to just after John's already had passed out. His wife's video is still playing. Oh yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah,
over the video, and it's almost like he was remembering it, like, and wakes up.
Yes,
like almost, and then goes into this building. We don't know what it is. Turns out it's like a dog hospital or a veterinary clinic, some kind of clinic.
Yeah,
so he can like stitch himself back up, and then
stapling himself.
Jeez, and then we hear whimpering, and we know what's happening. He looks at this cute little pit bull puppy.
Oh yeah,
pulls him right out of the cage, And then like the movie ends with just him staggering, hunched over, holding himself with this dog running every which way. So excited to be out.
Yeah.
Excited to have a friend. Like,
Yeah.
and then the movie ends. And I think it's just such a great dichotomy to how the movie started. It's just wild.
Yeah.
And like, I could have, like, that could have been the end of this franchise for me. Like, I think that's a satisfactory ending. That said, I do love the trilogy. But like, I just love the lack of energy of John Wick versus the extra energy of this pit bull puppy. And as someone who's played with pit bulls before and loves pit bulls, like, they have that kind of energy. Like that, they didn't have to teach the dog to do that. That was the dog being the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's sweet.
So now that we're at the end, I think we've covered it pretty thoroughly. We can't say this yet, but I'm curious what you put as a ranking for yourself on the John Wick movies.
Oh, that's such a good question. I like it's because also I haven't seen them all since I went on that like trilogy escapade with my spouse.
Right.
And the first one is the only one I've rewatched now today. I mean, I think 1 and 2 are like neck and neck. I think I'd have to watch 2 again.
Yeah.
I think 3 is my least favorite.
Yeah.
Only because, like I said, the final fight in that third movie, which you guys will get to, like that whole third movie just feels over the top, right? It's like there's a lot more mindless gun play and arsenal like gun shooting than the other movies have. You know, the second movie also, the bad guy in the second movie is so good and like is such is also very comical in the right ways. And I think it's the second movie that has like the knife room fight scene, like, which is very good. I think that's the third one. I don't know. Maybe, I can't remember.
The third one.
The third one's got the
beginning of the third one.
That's the beginning of the third one.
the axe and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Stabbing the guy in the eye.
Yeah. Like, I think all of them are just great, and it's hard to rank one better than the other. But if I gun to my head, I would rank it probably 2, 1, 3 would be my ranking.
Okay. Cool. Very cool. Well, hey, I think we did it.
I think we did it.
I think we did it. But now we got to hear a little bit from you and what you're up to and where people can find you and follow you and all that jazz.
Well, first, I want to thank you both for having me on the Macaw Universe podcast. I am a big fan of the show. I love what you both do. I was very happy to have y'all on Screen Snark, and I'm excited to be here. Maybe I'll come back sometime in the far-flung future. Look, if y'all ever want to talk to someone who unironically loves both Venom movies, I'm your guy because I do, and I would argue that they're good movies, and I'm happy to talk about why. Anyway,
okay, we'll put that in the memory bank here. But we haven't covered that yet. So
I am again Matt, aka Stormageddon. You can find me on most platforms at DJ_Stormageddon. You can find everything that I do at djstormageddon.com. I am a podcast host and producer. I'm a DJ and I'm a Twitch streamer. I currently host 4 podcasts and produce 9 podcasts because I hate free time and I'm a crazy person. The podcast that you should start with is my incredible TV and movie podcast, Screen Snark, which I host with the incredible Rachel Quirky Shank, who we had Jordan and Micah as guests. Y'all talked about The Sopranos. It was awesome. I don't remember what I talked about, but I'm sure it was great.
We talked about Cowboy Bebop at one point.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you talked about The Last Showman.
Oh,
I
did.
Showman.
Rachel talked about Cowboy Bebop.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I should update you. We have since finished watching The Sopranos.
Oh, great. Final verdict?
It was the best.
It was the best. Okay.
It's an easy number 1/2 of shows I've seen.
All right.
Like very easy for me. It was amazing.
But yeah, I also host a video game podcast called Fun and Games with my co-host Jeff, where we talk about different topics in the games industry. I have tons of great guests like Yuri Lowenthal, who's the current voice of Spider-Man in the video games, and is a well-known actor and video game voice actor and anime voice actor. He's Sasuke in the Naruto series, things like that. I do a Mass Effect retrospective podcast with my incredible co-host Frankie Frankie Bradley Lestrange. We finished the Mass Effect trilogy, and we've moved on to Mass Effect Andromeda, the newest game in the franchise, which I have never played, but my co-host has. So that's a new interesting wrinkle on that.
Cool.
And then I have an interview podcast that I will at some point have you both on called CPOV Autographs, where I interview podcasters, comedians, actors, actresses, musicians, all sorts of folks in the arts to just kind of get a little background on the kind of cool stuff that they do and give a place to feature
cool.
indie artists who are doing really cool work. Mike, I know you're a musician as well, and so I feel like an opportunity to spotlight a musician is always fun for me, as I'm a giant music nerd.
Well,
And I think that's really it. I don't. Again, if all of that was too much and was really overwhelming, then I'm just going to redirect you again to DJStormageddon.com. Super easy. Everything is there, including my merch page and my Ko-fi and like all of my podcasts. And again, DJ_Stormageddon. You type that into Google, you'll probably find me on most platforms. So yeah.
There's something for everyone.
Something for everybody.
That's what I
think
love
so.
about it.
You have not put all your eggs in one basket.
I have not. And what's funny is I used to have a music podcast that I desperately missed that it is on indefinite hiatus, which is a nice way of saying it's never coming back because we just don't have me and my co-hosts don't have the time to do it anymore. So I don't have a music podcast anymore. But I think if I start any more podcasts that I host, my spouse will kick me in the head because I have no time as it is. Also, I should say, if you're looking for help producing a podcast, I do podcast production and you can absolutely hire me. You can feel free to email me about my rates and that kind of thing. I'm trying to do more freelance work. And so, if you're interested in that kind of thing, please reach out.
Dang.
Do it, people.
Well, and if it was overwhelming, a great place to start is the Screen Snark starring Jordan and I.
Yes.
Because then you're in comfortable waters, and then you can be like, I enjoyed Matt. I enjoyed Rachel on the Batman and Robin episode. Okay, now I'm wading in the pool. I can continue.
Good advice.
Definitely.
Sometimes that's how it has to. That's how it has to be with me with podcasts. Usually.
Oh yeah.
You get comfortable with a person, and then you like that person, and then you. Go all over the place.
Yeah.
So, thank you for being on the show.
Thank
this
you
was
so much.
My
much
pleasure.
fun. I think this is like the third episode of the new year. Second or third. But
Wow.
Listeners, I think next week we're covering the new Scream movie. I think, but I'm not sure. But we'll be revisiting
'Cause you
Scream
can't
and
remember
then
when it comes out.
well, I know it comes
definitely-
out in January.
Great.
Anyway, Scream and John Wick this month. Let's go.
Bye.